Hey everybody, I'm Zach from BlueBotTech, and today we're going to be going over how to take something like this simple IKEA lamp and make it smart. Now we're going to be using something called a Sonoff Basic. It's essentially just a smart relay, and we're going to be using this because, in my opinion, it's super cheap and super simple. Now this lamp, in my opinion, is perfect for this because it uses these E12 bulbs. Now you can get smart bulbs in this form factor. Now they range anywhere from 10 to 60 bucks. So a Sonoff Basic, you can pick it up for $4 or $5, makes it almost half the price of the bulb. Another reason I think these are great is because you can put them on those devices like this lamp. I have one on a sound machine and a couple other devices that you may not want to put a smart switch or smart outlet wherever they're being used. So, I could move this around the house and keep it on the same Sonoff Basic. It has the same functionality and I don't got to worry about changing everything. Now, Sonoff does send these with their own firmware and they have an app included. However, we're going to show you how to flash new firmware with either Tasmota or ESPHome. And the reason I personally do this is because, one, latency. I think most of the servers for the Sonoff are in China. And then, of course, security. It brings this into my own network and we don't have to worry about that. All right, so let's go over. We're going to show you how to tear one of these apart, hook up the FTDI adapter, and then start flashing. Let's get into it.
Okay, so we're quickly going to go over some of the devices we're going to be using during this. As you can see, we have our Sonoff Basic, we have our FTDI adapter, we have this little kind of jumper I made. So I used a 4-port piece here because it's always going to be the same on Sonoff. As you can see, in here we have our transmit, receive, ground, and our 3.3 volts. Now, of course, we'll switch those transmit to receive, receive to transmit when we're hooked up. Also, these FTDI adapters have this small jumper here, and you'll flip that back and forth between 3.3 volts and 5 volts. So we're going to need that on 3.3 volts here, as you can see. Now the Sonoff Basic, we're going to have to get this out of the case, so it's pretty easy. You just pop these off, then really just pry this case open. Pretty simple. Pull that out. I already have one prepped, but as you can see here, we have where we'll put that header pin. To show you here, I soldered some of those on. Then on the flip side is where you'll see your terminals. You got ground, transmit, receive, and 3 volts. Okay, so we can get some of this out of the way. Now, we're going to be hooking it up to this lamp. So, this lamp does have a small toggle switch on it, but I'm going to install this a little further back on the cord. Now to do this, what we're going to do, we're going to simply take a pair of wire cutters and just a quick multi-tool here. And we'll snip that. Then what we need to do is ourselves some room to work. Now we need to strip these wires. So these wires are a little thick, so I'm going to be using a utility blade here. We don't need to strip too much of them. Cat out of the way. Alright, now that we've got those taken off, give those wires a quick twist. Alright, and once those are good to go, what we'll do, we'll install those into these terminals, just like such. But first, you're going to want to flash this. That's when it's flashed. Pop it back in its case. Now, of course, you always know which way it goes because the button and the LED only go on one side. They do fit in there with those headers, so that's nice. You make sure everything's nice and snug in there. Pop that back in, and then as you can see, simply pop those in there, tighten those terminals down, put these back on, and they come with a set of hardware that you'll just run some screws down through those holes. It's pretty simple. Alright, let's jump into flashing this. Okay, so as we talked about, we're going to be going over how to set up a Sonoff Basic, really to show the power of both ESPHome and Tasmota. So we're going to be going over both the flashing procedures and kind of where I think both fit in. So first of all, we're going to start off with ESPHome. Now as you can see, we're already set up here. We have the Sonoff Basic out of its case. We have it plugged into our FTDI adapter. Now this is just a cheap FTDI adapter I picked up off of Amazon, and you may have some issues with these, especially with like something like Windows 10. So I haven't had any issues on the Raspberry Pi itself or my MacBook, and I'll run you through some of the troubleshooting steps that can help with Windows 10. As you can see, I did solder some headers on to the pins here. We have ground, transmit, receive, and our 3.3 volts, and they're connected to the same pins on the FTDI adapter. Now, the only difference is you will have to flip your transmit and receive. So you have transmit to receive and then receive to transmit. Okay, so to get started, hop over into HomeAssistant. We'll start off by going to our supervisor, and you'll need to download or install the ESPHome add-on. So as you can see, I already have it installed. We'll go there, and the configuration, really not much here. There are some more advanced options if you're dealing with certs and key files for SSL, but we're not going to go over that right now. We'll go back to the info page, and I like to have start on boot checked, watchdog, and show in sidebar. That show in sidebar will give you this little ESPHome in the sidebar, and that's just a quick way to jump into the UI. So once this is started, and open our web UI, as you can see, we're ready to add a new node. So we'll do that. Now first, we're going to want to connect this to our computer, so we'll hold down the toggle button on the Sonoff while we plug it in. You hear the Windows chime, let go of the button, everything started up. We'll click add node, and we'll call this test Sonoff. Now I'll enter in my Wi-Fi information. I have an IoT network specifically for this. Copy my password. And click next. Now, generally what you could do is just go straight to connecting to the device, but I'm going to skip this and I'll show you why here in a second. Skip this. I like to pick specific boards, so we're going to go with a generic ESP8266, example Sonoff. However, there are a ton of devices you could pick from, so really wide open on what you can do with ESPHome. Click next. Okay, and now we see it's created a configuration. So we'll head over here, over test Sonoff. Now you see that gray bar just turned red. That means it's not connected to it and it can't find it, which makes sense because we haven't installed the firmware yet. So we can go here to edit. Now what you can see here is it generated a pretty basic YAML file based on what we gave it. So I've noticed that this YAML does not actually work. I couldn't ever get my Sonoff running on this basic YAML alone. So what you can do, if you need to, we go over to the ESPHome.io. We can click on the Sonoff Basic. That'll bring up this page. And you can see at the top the picture of the Sonoff. You can read through this. It gives you a lot of details on what's going on here. But essentially what you want to do is copy this. And then we'll kind of blend what was built here with what ESPHome created. So I'll kind of show you what that file looks like. I have it over here. And we'll post this in the description below as well. So essentially what I did here was take the combination of these two files. I wanted, the ESPHome. Now you'll see something I did have issues with is this Arduino version that is included. It had trouble connecting to my Wi-Fi if this was included. So I ended up taking this out, rebuilt the configuration, and everything does work that way. So you get your Wi-Fi, your AP. So this AP feature brings up a secondary hotspot for if for some reason it wasn't able to connect to it, you could then go and flash it over there connected to that secondary AP. Of course, we have the API to enable the HomeAssistant API, logging, the over-the-air password. Now, what this will do is allow you to flash your device over the air, which is really nice, and it'll read this file or this password from the file, so you won't have to remember that. And then everything else is a captive portal if we need to use that AP, and then all the binary sensor information, the switch information, and then our status pin LED. So what we can then do is save this. We can click install. Now I've noticed that what you can do is now, since this is plugged in, you could plug into this computer, choose this option, because we can't do wireless yet. What this will do is, as you can see, my USB serial port is paired. I'm not going to do this because I wasn't able to get it working like this. Now afterwards, over the air changes and stuff work great. I just couldn't get this to work. So what we'll do is I'm going to manually download this. As you can see, this may take a while. If the first time you do it, has to pull in a couple libraries. Okay, so as you can see, it's now downloaded our bin file. Now what I'm going to do is use ESPHome Flasher. Now, if you need to figure out how to set ESPHome Flasher up or any other kind of flashing stuff, we've gone over several of them on the channel. We'll throw some cards in this video just so you can link to those real quick if you need to figure that out. So what we'll do is load up ESPHome Flasher, COM5, browse to that bin we just downloaded, open it, and we'll flash. So now again, holding that button on the ESP is what puts it into write mode. So now it should be writing. As you can see, it says it's hard resetting and done flashing. Now I've noticed the hard reset may not necessarily work, so what we'll do, and the reason I like ESPHome is I can now unplug this, and you see that, plug it back in, the serial port should be open again. And now as you can see, we unplugged and plugged it back in, and we have the blue status LED blinking, so that's a good sign. So now we can click view logs. And we may have missed it, but usually it will say connecting, so I was just a little slow on clicking that. If you want, I can do it again, just in case. View logs. Okay, it's connected. Okay, as you can see, it's now connecting to my IoT network, and everything looks good. So this is what you want to see if you are viewing the logs. We now close out of ESPHome Flasher. We close this, and as you can see, our test Sonoff has now gone to green. Now, ESPHome does have an auto find kind of feature, so if we go over to configuration, integrations, we'll see test Sonoff has been discovered. Also get our notification down here. We can click configure, submit, and the device I'm going to be putting this on is in my basement, so we can click area, basement, and finish. And now what we would need to do is wire that device in line on these green terminals. However, we can go in here to the device and we can turn the relay on and off, and you'll see that relay turns on and off and on and off, and you can see just how little latency there really is there. So that is absolutely wonderful. Turn that off. Okay, so that is about as easy as it gets. Again, some of the weird things I've noticed, we haven't had issues with these when other devices we've used ESPHome with, but the Sonoff Basic, like I said, didn't seem to like that browser-based install, so using some other type of flasher seemed to solve that for me. Now again, if we wanted to, we could go in and edit this, and then we could install it wirelessly, and it should just connect to it. So yep, it's compiling, and it's going to flash it again, and everything should be good. I'm not going to stop it. We'll cut through here because this is already what we've gone over. Okay, and as you can see, it's connected, so the over-the-air stuff works. It's just that initial configuration is kind of wonky. Alright, so we're done with the ESPHome stuff, and we'll move on to Tasmota. Okay, now to flash Tasmota, it's going to be a lot of the same thing. Again, we'll unplug that, hold the button while we plug it back in. Plug it back in, we're connected. We can let that button go. Okay, so this now should be ready to flash Tasmota with. So to get started on that, what we'll do is we'll head over to the Tasmota page, and that's at tasmota.github.io/docs. And what we're going to want to do is grab that the newest release. So this is Tasmota Michael. We click that, and it brings us over here. We're going to scroll down, and we just want the Tasmota bin GZ. It's at the top. Okay, so we'll download that. Go ahead and open that. Again, you may need 7-zip on Windows to extract that gzip file. We should be good to go now. Yep, we got our tasmota.bin. And again, I'm going to use ESPHome Flasher. It's my preferred way of flashing. And again, I'm using a Python virtual environment here to just kind of keep things clean personally. Again, we've covered that in our last video, so definitely if you want to learn how to use Python virtual environments, that's covered there. So we'll load up ESPHome Flasher. We'll find our COM5 port where we're connected. Browse to that tasmota.bin, open it, and we'll flash it. Okay, so as you can see, that's now finished flashing. And what we will need to do is connect to our Tasmota device, and we'll do that via the access point it's set up. Now, unfortunately, the computer I'm using does not have Wi-Fi since it's hardwired, so I'm going to switch over to my phone. Okay, so as you can see, we are flipped over to my phone here. What I'm going to do is connect to this Tasmota device that's showing up. What this should do is pop up a captive portal. There it goes. And what we'll be able to do here is choose our network. So I want my IoT network, and we'll paste in my password. Save that. So it now should be connecting the device to the network, and it should tell us what the IP was once it does connect. Okay, so it's successfully connected. You can see it's the .107.49. So what we can do is copy this and cancel out of this now. Network, we'll switch back over. Alright, so now that we have that Sonoff Basic connected to our network, what we'll do is head over here to configuration, and we're going to go to users, and we need to create this MQTT user. So we can click add user, type your display name, a username and password, and it does not need to be an administrator. Definitely remember this password. You're going to need it for your Sonoff Basic and all your other MQTT devices. Head over to our MQTT device our Tasmota device. Remember, it gave us that IP address when we set the Wi-Fi up. Here, we're just going to have to do a couple simple configuration changes. So we can check through a couple of these. This is set right as a Sonoff Basic, so we should be good there. Our Wi-Fi, we've already set that up. Configure our MQTT. So to do our user, MQTT user, that's our password. Okay, and then of course, once you get into deeper MQTT things, which we have a video on Node-RED, and we plan on coming out with more. But this is where you would do those more advanced settings, and you would set topics and full topics. But we don't need that for today. Now we can put our host for our HomeAssistant in here. Save that. So now this is going to have to reset. Go to our configuration again. To go to our configure template, and instead of being generic, we'll have to change it to Sonoff Basic, which should be in somewhere. There it is. Okay, so as you can see, that changes what is on those GPIO pins. Go ahead and save that. Back to our main menu. And the nice thing is these devices do start back up really quickly. Now actually real quick, we can probably go ahead and change the name of this device. We can call this Sonoff Basic Tasmota. We'll just call it Tasmota Demo. Save that. Head back to our main menu. Hopefully I didn't change anything else by accident. Should be able to head back over to HomeAssistant, do our configuration, our integrations, and as you can see, I've already have a Tasmota device in my network. I only have one, and now I have 2 devices. Okay, and here is our basement Tasmota. And clicking that and turning it on at the same time, get a camera going so you can see that. So as you can see, I'm turning it off, on. So they're both super fast, which is great, and this doesn't take much setup. Now, as we said, you can get into much more advanced things with Node-RED, which we can talk about in other videos if that's something you would all like us to do. But other than that, this is kind of the easy setup of both Tasmota and ESPHome. They're not that bad.
Okay, I really hope you all enjoyed this one. Again, the Sonoff Basic can take any of those simple devices, especially your ones that require that on-off, and turn them into a smart device for $4 to $5. So you really can't beat that. Of course, I said I would go over some of the pros and cons of Tasmota and ESPHome. Personally, I like both. I have devices in my network running on both. One thing, it could be a pro or a con, is Tasmota does have that hard requirement for an MQTT broker. So you kind of have that middleware you have to deal with. Maybe not a big deal for some, but could be a stopping point for others. Again, you can get super powerful with MQTT using something like Node-RED. So we have a video out on that now. We're going to come out with some more advanced Node-RED videos in the future. The device list for Tasmota is also absolutely massive. So if there's already a product out there, there's probably a bin file or a setup you can use on Tasmota, and it'll work right away. Another thing I really like about Tasmota is that web UI you get. You can adjust all your GPIO pins. You got a console in there, all kinds of logging, timers, whatever you want, you got it. I think that's a big kind of pro for there. I also like the fact that I could really flash a device and connect to the BSSID it broadcasts and never connect it to a network. So you don't have that hard network requirement. I can just use the device from that web UI, which we may have some kind of weird projects in the future coming up that use exactly that feature. Now jumping over to ESPHome, again, you don't have that hard MQTT requirement, and you can build a custom firmware from just a bit of YAML, which is super powerful. We have a video out currently. We'll link that in the description below, but we built a motion sensor, and it was all built in ESPHome, a little bit of YAML, and you're good to go. Now, like I said, that's super powerful for really custom projects. But again, the device list isn't quite there like Tasmota is, but it's growing, weekly. Anyway, I hope this was a great video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please subscribe, like, and don't forget to comment. Let us know what you want to see, and we'll catch you in the next one.